So if you're interested in pivoting from single-family residential properties and getting into the world of commercial, pay attention to this upcoming episode. You're going to love this conversation I had with Tim Blake. Let's go! Hey gang, how's it going? Russell Westcott here. So I help real estate investors start, grow, and scale the real estate investing portfolio of your dreams. So if you're interested in taking the next step, or you're interested in taking a different step, maybe you're interested in going from residential properties into the world of commercial. The only thing different between commercial and residential is everything is different. So if you're interested in making that transition, if you're interested in getting into commercial properties without making the big mistakes, pay attention to this upcoming video. In this episode, I have an opportunity to go one-on-one with Tim Blake. Tim is first and foremost is a real estate investor. He's also a commercial realtor as well to help people out in the Grand Prairie, Alberta market, Northern Alberta, and Tim knows his stuff. We go head first. I think he bought his first place that he shared on here when he was 18, 19 years old. And over the past years, he has pivoted into commercial properties. So we go very deep. We actually nerd out on this episode and we go very deep talking about the differences between residential, commercial properties, financing. Tim walks me through the entire buying process. Everything from how to source the properties, how to analyze the properties, how to buy the properties, how to finance the properties, and how to manage them once you've got them in your portfolio. And plus, in this episode, if you're interested, stay tuned right to the very end. There will be links below for some property analyzers. If you're ready to make that pivot from residential into commercial, Tim and I chat about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talk about all the aspects of it, everything from triple net leases to management and everything in between. So, you know what? Without any further delay, let's get after it. Hey, Tim Blake, how are you doing? Welcome to the show today, my friend. What's going on up in Grand Prairie today?
Yeah, it's actually really busy up here in Grand Prairie. Things are definitely humming, and I'm looking forward to talking to you. I've followed your show and different of your teachings in the past, so I'm definitely excited to give back a little bit.
Well, we're going to dive headfirst into the whole wonderful world of commercial real estate. But before we do get into it, I always like to start off with a little bit, maybe icebreaker and a little bit of get to know the person and stuff. So your name's Tim Blake. Now, this may sound like a really obscure question, but I have a feeling you may have heard this reference. Are you familiar with the Key and Peele Comedy Central substitute teacher skit that you have? Have you ever seen that?
I actually haven't.
Okay.
No, I haven't seen that one.
So I'm going to leave that for homework for you to look up. It's very funny, and it has to do with the word with Blake, with the name Blake, right? So I'm going to leave that for you for some homework. It's the Key and Peele Comedy Central substitute teacher skit. Okay, and if any of you are listening, anyone else is listening to this, I want you to check that out. Okay. All right. Before we get to know you a little bit deeper, Tim, you're in commercial real estate and you're up in Grand Prairie. For somebody listening to this, what the heck is a Grand Prairie?
Grand Prairie, we're about 4.5 hours north of Edmonton, and we got about 70,000 people here, and we're definitely an oil and gas town. We've got some other industries as well, but oil and gas is kind of our bread and butter, and we go through the swings as well, and but right now we're definitely on an upswing. Things are busy here, and biggest problem people are having is getting staff up here and going.
Well, I know the joke a lot of people might be saying right now is there's nothing north of Edmonton. Edmonton is already north. Like if you look on a map, and Edmonton is the furthest north that you ever want to go anyway. So I mean, there's life north of Edmonton.
Yeah. Even when we first came up here, we lived down in Calgary originally, and we went up. My dad got transferred up to this area, and they kept on flipping the map over and over in old school when there was maps back then, and to try and find where we were getting sent to up in Grand Prairie.
Yeah, so things are cooking up in Grand Prairie again, which is really nice to see, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit more later on in the show, or maybe we'll book another time, because I'm very interested, and I know a lot of my audience is very interested in what's going on in Alberta, what's going on there economically, and what did we just see recently? I hope you saw that too. What was the almost a $4 billion budget surplus that the government that was delivered just recently?
Yeah, big news, because I mean, with oil and gas, the way it's priced, the government's getting a lot off royalties now, where when it's low, they hardly make anything. So with high oil and gas, it's definitely helping the Alberta government get their finances in order, and it's just positive for everybody in our province here, just when things are going that direction.
Well, it's really nice to see, guys. So it's an anomaly in Canada that a government will deliver a balanced budget, let alone deliver a surplus. And I believe the number that they're basing the balanced budget for the next year on is only a $70 barrel of oil. And so things are looking positive. And we can argue till the cows come home if this is good or bad or whatever. A good, healthy energy economy in Canada, in Alberta, is good for Canada. Alberta delivering that big surplus of a budget is actually good for transfer payments, which is good for healthcare, which is good for social programs, which is good for universities in Ontario, universities in Quebec. So a good, healthy Alberta is good for Canada. Would you agree, Tim?
I agree 100% for sure.
So now we can get
more
off
pipelines so we can be more prosperous.
Well, yeah, we could go on and on about that, couldn't we? So, Tim, if we only knew a country or even a government that actually owned a pipeline, right? If we only knew that government, eh?
Only.
Exactly. All right. Well, we could talk energy and oil and gas till the cows came home, Tim. But we're going to talk commercial real estate here today. And this will be the first time I've really introduced this topic to my podcast, to my audience. But before we do jump into that, do you mind if you do a little quick introduction of yourself, maybe a little bit of your backstory, what you've done within the context of real estate, what has led you up to this point of being this powerhouse commercial real estate expert?
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll give you a little bit of a history here.
Well, you're a humble Canadian to start with, right?
Yeah. So I started in real estate really young. I actually bought my first house at 18, and then bought my second house at 19, and just kind of started building just residential from the start. And for a long time, it was just kind of a side business. I'd buy a few houses a year and do the odd flip here and there. And it was kind of a side business as I had different careers, but mostly in sales. I'd done some sales with John Deere and did some modular home sales eventually. And sales was kind of my main job, and real estate was always my passion and my side business. And probably about 7 years ago, I made it my full-time business. So I kind of became a full-time real estate investor. I actually got my realtor license so I could get access to deals and save commissions and just have the ins and outs of it. But I wasn't your typical realtor. I mean, I didn't sell people's houses or work with buyers. I basically was just using it to be an insider, because in real estate, we're allowed to be inside traders. In stock market, you get in trouble for that. But in real estate, you can trade on inside information and you get access to stuff before anybody else does. So that's the big reason why I put myself in that position. And then I gravitated towards commercial real estate kind of around that time. And that's kind of my focus today is, invest in commercial real estate and inviting partners to join me. And I do a little bit of commercial realtor work as well, but I don't really do any on the residential side.
So what do you typically own right now in your portfolio within commercial properties?
So kind of, I have a bit of a mix. So I have kind of my bread and butter stuff would be like multi-base shops. So I'd have say like a 15,000 square foot shop, split into 4 or 5 different bays, different tenants, and a little bit of office in front, shop in the back. Kind of my cookie cutter deal. I mean, I have some other stuff, just some standalone shops and kind of light industrial around Grand Prairie area. And that's kind of my sweet spot. I have some office stuff as well. I'm kind of I search for a good deal. If the numbers work and I can add value to it, and that's kind of I will branch out a little bit and grab opportunities that come in front of me.
Nice. So your bread and butter, pardon the pun I'm going to use here, it's almost like the mullet of commercial real estate is office in the front, shop in the back.
Absolutely.
Oh, hang on. I gotta get a little bit of a hang on a second. There we go.
I think I want to write that one down, actually. Yeah, that's good.
No, that's I love it. I absolutely love it. So Okay, so we're definitely going to dive into commercials. So if somebody was sitting here and treat me like I'm really green and I know nothing about this. So if somebody was coming to you and maybe most people probably are familiar with residential, they've bought their own property, they've qualified for a mortgage. Commercial is a little bit of a completely, what did I hear the terminology is? Everything is different in commercial. Right? Almost
Absolutely.
everything. It's still a property and you still rent it and it's a business, but almost everything is a little bit different. So why don't we start the conversation here with what are some of the differences between commercial? No, I'm going to ask a better question. First of all, let's define commercial in your eyes, and then we'll talk about some of the differences. So what is a commercial real estate typically?
Yeah. So, and that's very broad what commercial is, but I guess when I'm talking about it for what I invest in, typically it'd be like offices, shops, retail, kind of your tenant is a company, and triple net leases typically. And what a triple net lease is basically the tenant looks after all the expenses, property tax, insurance, snow removal kind of thing. So you basically just rent out the space and they look after all the expenses. So unlike residential where the landlord will pay for all that stuff, typically the tenant would pick up the cost on a lot of that stuff as it comes up.
Okay, so commercial is a very big giant bucket. First of all, isn't it? So would it be safe to say commercial would be anything outside of that doesn't house people's residences? Would that be as a starting point to start with?
Yeah, no, that'd be a fair statement for sure.
Okay.
I mean, and a lot of people do also, put multifamily in that commercial bucket. I mean, for what in my conversation, I guess I'm more referring to the shops, offices, retail, that type of thing.
Yeah. Now, and typically within the residential world, I believe here's what the terminology sometimes comes down to is how the banks look at it. Really what bucket they put it into more is, oh, well, that's a commercial mortgage. So then people say, well, it's a commercial piece of real estate typically, but it's a good way it's one way of looking at it. But your niche is really specific within renting to businesses and having the businesses pick up the majority of the tab of all the expenses, and then you're just the owner of the rental property in essence.
Yeah,
Okay.
Correct. That's a lot of it, and that's one of the things that attracted me to the commercial investment versus residential. So I have done a lot of residential rentals. I still hold a fair number. I just don't actively acquire more right now.
Yep.
So I guess the ease of your management is one of the things that attract me to it. Also, scalability, like larger numbers. I mean, to buy say a $2 million shop, you have to buy a lot of houses to kind of get that same dollars out into the market and same returns. And so that's kind of the couple things that attracted me to it, as well as cash flow. Cash flow is, if done properly, substantially better in commercial than residential.
Okay. So how is the commercial market right now? Now I know you're more of an expert in just your local market, as all real estate is hyper local, by the way, everybody. But I think commercial has been getting a bad rap over the last couple of years, and everybody's saying commercial's dead and all this kind of stuff. So from your perspective, as somebody who's in this every day, what is kind of the state of the commercial market? And also, are there sectors within it that are really on fire, and where are you putting your money right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And for sure, commercial has definitely been beat up last couple of years with COVID. But like you said, very, very, every market has sub-markets and within that. So I guess I'll speak to my market specifically. So certain parts of it have been beat up more than others. So for example, retail, they've been forced to shut down through COVID, and then even office has been beat up a fair bit more. Whereas like the shops and that stuff, yes, it still got a hit when oil prices went negative and things were really slow in 2020. But say right now, I mean, small shop offices, the party in the back reference there, they're pretty popular right now. There's like a lot of those guys are very busy right now, and it's heading the right direction. I mean, I'm not saying it's crazy busy, but it's we're heading the right direction. Things are steady for sure.
Nice. And I would imagine warehousing would be something that's probably doing quite well too. Is everybody needs their Amazon shipments, and Amazon needs and everybody has to have their consolidation of all their goods and things. If people aren't going to the store, but they still need their goods and services to them, sometimes they have to house those things in the warehousing as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sector, if you're looking on whole sector, that's definitely warehousing and industrial in general has fared better through the COVID than retail and office. Yep. And I mean, even now, I mean, I hope we're through COVID now, but still, I mean, those are definitely the hotter sectors, or the shops and warehousing, as opposed to offices. Offices is still a little more challenging in a lot of markets, and Grand Prairie as well.
Yeah, and I imagine everybody offices, most people have got, the work from home has been a huge dent into the office space as well. We're sitting having this conversation. You're up in Grand Prairie, I'm out in Vancouver, and we're having this wonderful conversation over Zoom and online. And, it's, I'd much rather be in person with you and shake your hand and have a Tim Hortons. But at the same time, this is a game changer of technology, of us having this conversation. And that changed the way people have worked and done business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely more of this going on. And I mean, I'd always prefer to have an in-person, but this is a substitute that really wasn't available. Even a few years back, it was very uncommon. It was forced into more use with COVID.
Yep. So what is really, is it just oil and gas that's really driving Grand Prairie right now? Again, like it was probably about 15 years ago, Grand Prairie was ranked number 2 place to invest, and it went extremely, growth was just through the roof. And that's the primary thing that's happening up there? Is there a little bit of divesting from just oil and gas into exploration of other energy sources? What is kind of the pillars that are growing out that way?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, oil and gas specifically, we're definitely a big gas town, so that's big. But we do have other industries as well. We have forestry is pretty big up here, and we are also we're kind of a regional hub. So we have a lot more big box stores, for example, than a typical 70,000 person city would have, because we do draw about a 300,000 people trading area, because we draw a lot of the rural in from Peace River and north from there. A lot of people come here to shop, even into BC. People from Fort St. John and Dawson, this is their shopping destination to hit Costco and things like that. So we do get a lot of that support. And then there's some big petrochemical plants in the works right now up here that big numbers. And we just finally finished our hospital that took over a decade to build. So that's a big, health hub. So there is definitely some diversity here. And we did actually fare the last downturn better than a lot of other places. But I mean, we definitely still have that boom town. When things boom here, we boom hard, and we do often have a pretty big fall as well. So there's definitely a bit more roller coaster to it. But I mean, I don't mind that, because I like to pick up properties when they're on sale and kind of prepare to weather those storms. And we do get really good cash flow up here compared to any other market that I know of. We get better cash flow. So you can definitely put aside some in the good times for the tougher times.
Yep. Yeah. And I just asked that question a little bit, not selfishly, but I own some properties up in Peace River, which is just a little bit more north of there even. And it's amazing on something that's only about an hour and a half away, how Peace River is just extremely slow and dead compared to when Shell closed and mothballed their project up there. The one horse town really kind of, it left a few horse apples for everybody around there. And our rents dropped $300. We had, it's not always sunshine and roses. In some cases, things you need to weather the storm. And sometimes the storm can last years, if not decades as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. So commercial real estate. So from your perspective, and obviously you're, biased because, and good and rightfully so, because that's where you have your money in and you're an expert on it. What are the pros and what are the cons of commercial real estate? What are some of the benefits of putting your capital into commercial properties?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll just take you through my thought process when I kind of switched my focus to that. Again, we kind of mentioned before, cash flow. The cash flow is substantially better in commercial. I mean, residential, you're pretty hard pressed to find cash flow really anywhere. And in commercial, it's very good if you buy it right and manage it right and the whole thing. But it can be very good. And then, like I mentioned before, about the triple net leases. So that basically means, like you said, you're basically downloading that cost to your tenants versus to you. So if the property taxes, insurance, I mean, if the toilet breaks, the tenant doesn't call you and you go call plumber. You say they would call plumber and pay for it directly, and you would sometimes not even know what happened, kind of thing. So definitely a lot less involved. Once you get a good lease in place, you're not as involved in the property management. But so that's kind of some of the positives of it. I mean, also you can just like in an apartment building, you can force appreciation if you buy it well with rents under. You can do the same thing if you buy a building with rents below market or even vacant, and if you can kind of get a tenant in place there or get the rents up to where they should be, you can very quickly add equity, get the value of it up, and get the all the benefits that come with that, with other financing and good returns for yourself and your investors as well.
Yeah. So obviously, I often ask the question, well, it sounds so wonderful. It's just like, why isn't everybody investing in commercial? Which maybe some people should have more commercial in their portfolio. I have some of my coaching clients that have pivoted over to commercial. They started it off as they had a family business and they needed to host their family business in a property. And they go, well, instead of paying rent to somebody else's thing, well, let's just go buy the building and we'll host our family wellness center in that business. And they go, man, we just love this. And then they have extra space and they rent it to other people. And now they're looking at other properties and stuff like that. So what are some of the downsides if somebody was for commercial?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, one big downside right off the bat, I mean, is a higher cost per entry. I mean, you can't buy most commercial. I mean, yeah, you can buy little condos that start in the $500,000 range, but get something of any kind of scale, you're $1.5 plus $1 million to get started. So, the entry point is definitely a higher cost. Also, there's a lot more vacancy risk. So. You probably have a similar vacancy in residential or commercial. It's just the timing can last much longer. So if somebody were to just buy, say, one building, and then they have a vacancy, I mean, that could sit for a year plus vacant, and you're paying all those property tax, mortgage, everything in place. Where residential, typically you can just lower your rent a little more, you'll get it filled. Not really the case in commercial. It's got to be just the right fit for somebody. So your vacancies can be much, much longer. But on the flip side, I mean, you also can have tenants in there for 15, 20 years. So I guess my answer to, mitigate that risk is I don't like to have just one property. I would want to have several properties, or at least one building with several units in it. So you can kind of mitigate that vacancy risk. So if you have 5 units within it, one's vacant, it's not ideal, but you're still going to be okay because the other ones are carrying it. As opposed to having one big building and it goes dark on you, you can definitely be in trouble on that. So that would be one of the big downsides.
Yeah, and I would imagine there's probably the supply. There's not as much of these units, or should I let me phrase it as a question? How is the supply of these kind of properties for somebody if they are looking at it? I would imagine it's not as prevalent or not as many as residential. Like, is there a supply problem, or is there lots of things on the market? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, every market's going to cycle differently, but I mean, yeah, it's very, very hard to find a property that works, for a decent price, for a decent property for cash flows. That's a lot of what I do is I just search for those properties. And again, a big reason why I have my real estate license is so I can get those deals before they get out to the public. A lot of commercial real estate does trade without ever going on to any kind of a realtor.ca. So a lot of it is kind of internal dealings and that. So there's a lot of that. And yeah, a lot of my time is spent just trying to find opportunities, because they are hard to find. If you were just to go on the MLS right now, I mean, you probably wouldn't find one that will cash flow to where it needs to be, because it is tough to find for sure.
Okay. Well, so I know the answer. I'm going to answer the question, but then I'm also going to ask a question if you can deliver and go deeper into this. The answer to my question I'm about to ask is, how do you locate and source these properties? The right answer is you find a good qualified, competent realtor to be able to go do this work for you, right? So that's the answer. But if you were to deepen that, Tim, like, how does somebody go out and search these? Like, obviously they're going to work with a good realtor, but how or is it just that as simple as go find a realtor and let that realtor just go do the digging?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a bit of that as well. I mean, a realtor, and I guess the one thing for sure, to make sure you work with a realtor who is a commercial realtor and is active in that space. Because I mean, most realtors do have their commercial license, so they are allowed to trade in commercial real estate, but they don't on a regular basis. So they're not plugged in, and a lot of times don't know what a good deal even looks like. So make sure, if you're gonna want to get in a space, work with somebody who primarily works in commercial real estate. And yep. I mean, that's pretty easy to tell. I mean, you can literally just search what listings they have. If they're almost all residential, that's not your guy. It'd be someone who has a lot of commercial listings, and then so work with a competent realtor. But I mean, even further than that, networking, just talking to people, businesses. I mean, things that's a lot of times a deal might come from that. You hear of one building. I bought the building. It was on the MLS as a vacant building, but I don't like vacant buildings typically to buy because they can sit for a while, and also banks will not finance them. So, like on a residential, you can get financing on a vacant building, and they'll finance you. Not the case in commercial. Typically, they want to see a tenant in place because they know it can sit a long time vacant as well. So, for example, I found a vacant building that was available to everybody on realtor.ca, but just through networking, I came across a tenant who was a perfect fit for that building. We married the two. I got a lease in place and a purchase offer, so I was able to buy the building really well because it was vacant and had a lease in place to go to the bank with, and tenant got into the space that was perfect for him, and it was a really good fit. So networking is huge, just shaking the bushes, and you got to really, really dig on them. Yeah, for sure.
So just getting out there and just being that boots on the ground and getting out there. And do you do anything? Do you do social media? Do you do direct mail? Do you do if we give me a little bit of the secret sauce here, kind of on how locating property. I don't think there'll be any other commercial realtors up in Grand Prairie that'll probably be listening to this, but some of these tips and things like that, whether you're finding a commercial property or whether you're finding an apartment building or whether you're finding just a single family home, these are valuable tips of somebody who's in the trenches every single day. What else do you do what else do you do to shake the leads to get properties to come to you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely do some Facebook ads, basically just I buy commercial properties, contact me, and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying a lot maybe comes from that, but more and more just kind of getting known as someone who's in the market, who's buying that, and someone who can close. So if you do get brought deals, just someone who follows through on what you say you're going to do, and can close a property. Because I mean, any realtor who is in this space, I mean, they have a lot of people who maybe might want to work with them if they had an opportunity, but they kind of will filter out people who they can tell if aren't serious, aren't ready to act on something, and they'll send it to somebody else who might be able to close on it. So just reputation of being somebody who's in that space and just kind of be known as the guy that does that. So I do get a lot of deals across my desk from sellers or other realtors who just know that's what I buy. So I managed to get those across my desk. And so that I mean, it's hard when you're just starting out. It's definitely hard to be a known quantity, but you got to start somewhere, buy the first one, and kind of keep scaling and let people know. Just let people know what you're doing, and you do that enough, and people will find stuff for you.
Ooh, hang on a sec. Bringing the fire here, Tim. Attaboy. Gotta drop in some fire now. No, we're not going to have any that forest fires up northern Alberta this year. It's been a lot drier, and obviously when fire happens, what do? We got to drop a bomb. Right. So,
all right.
Okay. So if you just are known for somebody who buys, and if you're known for somebody who has a buyer's list, It's amazing on how many opportunities just keep coming to you to analyze. And, if you have people that can transact or you yourself transact, it's one of those things. It's just what a coincidence that more properties get attracted to you because you're known to somebody who closes, somebody who has a buyer's list, or somebody who buys themselves. It's amazing how that happens, right?
Absolutely. That's 100%. You get substantial amount of leads that nobody else sees. A lot of time, like either it's like in my case, sometimes it's a seller, or even just someone who, hey, I heard Bob wants to sell his building and that kind of stuff. So you get that a lot of long as people know what you're doing, and they'll go out and that goes for any kind of real estate, whether it's commercial, residential. It's just be known as somebody who is in that space, and always do what you say you're going to do, and you'll definitely get opportunities. The harder you work, the luckier you get in that type of scenario.
Yep, 100%. I know my business partner in Edmonton, who I bought 85%, probably 90% of my properties through. He just shakes the trees. He just knows the developers. He knows the people that own the land positions. He knows all the builders, and he's known as somebody who brings buyers to the table, right? And They have a property and they want to sell a property. They phone him up and say, I got a property. I need this to sell. And he goes, perfect. I know the perfect person for that. I'll have you an offer in, a couple days type of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again, super common in the commercial world. There's every realtor or landlord or something like that, they know of a couple guys they're going to call first if they want to move something. And also with commercial real estate, sometimes the landowner doesn't want actually anybody to know it's for sale, so they don't really want it on realtor.ca and want a whole bunch of different people going through it and analyzing it. So if they know if they have one or two people they can reach out to, and if you're that guy, then you can definitely get access to these properties before somebody else does, and make yourself a decent deal in the process. And they're happy because it's easy and discreet. And some of those people, they have multiple properties too. So if you do one deal with them, they may come back and keep feeding you later too.
No, I totally agree. Okay, so let's say we're in the market, and we're going to talk about financing here in a bit through the process. Okay, we're going to kind of walk people through the process. So let's say somebody's listening to this or watching this on YouTube, and they're going, you know what, I like it. Commercial, I want to take a look at it. Let's see what Tim, we find a good commercial realtor. We call Tim up, and Tim comes back, and so walk me through the process. If I'm interested in buying commercial, how do I need to be qualified? What do you ask me a certain amount of questions? How does the process go for offering? And then we'll get into financing after that as well. So kind of walk me through the process.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess we'd initially just have a conversation about what exactly it is that you're trying to accomplish. If your goal is say for example, I want to get into commercial, I've got some residential, and I like the idea of commercial. Is find out, okay, so what are your motivating factors for doing it? Are you wanting cash flow? And say that's the case, you're looking for maybe better cash flow. So we kind of talk about that, and then kind of get an idea of what your budget is. So typically, the kind of a quick rule of thumb, if you have about a third of the property value in cash available. So if you're looking at a $1 million property, you have $333,000 kind of available. About 25% of that will be down payment, and the rest be kind of like a float, a safety fund. And so kind of get a sense of what capacity you can afford to get into. And then from there, we would just start talking about what opportunities might be there, if there is any. Again, a lot of times there might not be something on the market right now, and we'd have to just kind of keep an eye out or make some calls and see if there's something that might fit for that. And then again, say something does come across it works right away. Be just okay, here's the property. On what I would do is find out, okay, what are the rents, and I'd kind of, for my clients, I'd run the numbers for them. And okay, here's how I see this, laying out. Here's why I think it's maybe a good property, or here's why it's not a good property. Like they're asking way too much for it. You don't ever want to believe though the listing realtor's pro forma on it, because it can be very rosy. It can, a lot of times, even if they're not trying to deceive, they may not know, or it's just they'll look at it differently. Because they'll, for example, on a commercial property, we'll look at the net income on it. So you're basically your income after all your expenses before your mortgage. but you're also going to want to put a vacancy amount on there. In my market, called 8%. You're going to want to put, repairs and maintenance. So even though the tenant is looking after, the typical stuff, there's still at some point a roof's going to go. Some point you're going to have to replace, the big major capital items, which is often at the landlord expense. So say you put 3-4% on that, depending on age of building and condition and that kind of thing. So, and from there you'll get your net operating income. And then from that, we would apply a cap rate to that. So say in my market, 8% is kind of a number that kind of gets me interested in a deal. So we put that on there. And if the number is in that range, then maybe it's something to look at further. But again, a lot of times if you see marketing, you might see a marketing out there that says, 9% cap rate. Well, that's without any kind of vacancy. It's one of those magical buildings who never goes vacant and never has an expense. So you got to kind of really dig into numbers, learn how to do the numbers yourself as well. And I'll always share my kind of templates with my clients so they can start learn how to underwrite their own deals as well.
Wow. Holy moly. We unpacked hang on, Tim, you're on fire here, my brother. You're bringing the goods here today, brother.
Hope that's not too technical. But.
No. Oh, hang on. We got the fire, we got a bomb there, right? No, please. I strongly encourage you to get as technical as you possibly can here, because we have a very savvy audience of investors and very eager to learn this kind of stuff. Okay, so somebody contacts you, you walk them through a little bit of essentially qualification. You give them the real goods. Is, look, getting into commercial, you're going to need more money. Typically, your loan to values are a lot less in commercial, I would imagine, than a residential property where you can. It all depends on the numbers, I would imagine. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, 75% loan to value is kind of a fair place to be. There will be times if the bank might want you to go maybe 65% loan to value, depending on the location of the property. Maybe the tenants leased are shorter, or maybe there's more vacancy. They'll want you to put more down. But 75% is kind of the good starting point to kind of reference from.
Yeah. So okay. So we come in, you ask them a few questions. I need to have my ducks in order of some capital, some qualification. Then you do some work and you present a pro forma to your client as well. So that's awesome. That maybe in the commercial world, that's what realtors do, but it's amazing in the residential world, very few realtors will actually ever present a pro forma to their clients. They'll sit there and go, well, here's the MLS listing sheet. And you're going, well, okay, what do I do with this? Yeah. Right? So
yeah.
you take,
and that's,
go ahead, please.
I wouldn't say that's the norm. Just because I'm also a buyer, I'll look at it like as if I'm going to buy it. Here's the numbers I would use to look at it. And I spend the majority of my time not as a commercial realtor. I spend the majority of my time as an investor. So I'm kind of focused through that lens specifically. Where a lot of other realtors, even if they're commercial realtors, they wouldn't maybe have the same details on the numbers as I would, because I'm the one paying the bills on these buildings. So I kind of can help them along the process and try and get them as much information as they can to make a decision on it. But a lot of times I do get people who, I guess, look into it and realize maybe it's not for me. Like, again, say if they did have that $300,000 available, but they can only buy one building with that, and they're maybe gonna have to stop there. That might not be the best fit for them, because again, if that one building goes vacant, they could be in trouble. So that might not always be the best fit unless they have, wanting to get a bigger building where you have multiple spaces or kind of diversify your risk that way. And a lot of times I do work with give people opportunity to join me on deals so we can buy bigger deals and we have that, scalability and spread that risk over multiple units as well.
Nice. So that's a very key thing. Now, you had mentioned a couple things about your pro formas and analysis and things like that. Is that something that you share with your clients? Is that something that you'd be able to share with my audience as well? Like just some templates and how people look at it and things like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book. I'd happy to show you a pro forma on properties I've underwritten for sure. Okay,
so guys, if you're listening to this, in the notes, in the show notes, in the notes below, Tim, if just make a mental note to send me a couple of templates and I'll pop it in, or if you have it on your website or someplace like that, by all means, let me know the URL and I'll put it in the show notes and people can just take a look at these templates and wonderful things like that. Because I learn a lot. Everybody learns a lot by looking at something that somebody has done before and a couple best practices from there. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll definitely share. I mean, I definitely don't have it on a website there, but I'll definitely share it with you there.
Yeah, please. Or just fire them off to me and I'll take care of it. Okay. So now financing. Do you recommend somebody go get pre-positioned to go to have a conversation with a good qualified, more professional person before they start writing offers? Or is it typically you write the offer, then you get the financing? Or is it kind of a combination of all the above?
Yeah, I would recommend definitely having that first kind of pre-consultation, and probably with that, I'd probably send them maybe with a template of a deal, a typical deal that they might be looking at. Even if there's not a deal on the table, say, okay, here's the type of property I'm buying. Here's around what the numbers are going to look like, and then kind of give it to your banker and see if there's something there. If they think that's within your capacity to do that deal, or if maybe you're biting off more than you can chew, or again. And I wouldn't also go to your typical banker as well, because I mean they're personal bankers. You want to talk to somebody who does commercial on a regular basis, and so there's mortgage brokers who can do it. But I found in my experience the best luck is to go bank direct. Pick the banks who have the more favorable terms for commercial real estate, and just talk to their commercial division, their bankers directly.
Yeah, one of the things I advise people to do, it's very similar. We're in lockstep here. Is get a financing opinion, because before you even write the offer, find out where you stand, find out potentially what the building what they'll finance. So you may find out that, oh, by the way, based on these numbers, we're only going to give you 50% down payment and your interest rate's going to be 11.5% and blah, 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 or whatever. And you're going, well, I don't have the other 50%, right? So it's nice to kind of know that before you even kind of start writing the offer.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Definitely want to do that before you start writing offers and I guess burning bridges. When you start writing offers and you can't back up, it definitely hurts your credibility, and you're not going to get future opportunities if you don't kind of have at least some of your ducks in a row. I mean, no bank's going to give you a pre-approval on a shop before the details, but at least you'll know: do you have the capacity to do this? Do we like these numbers, this area? And again, and maybe it's not the right bank either. I mean, just because one bank says no doesn't mean it's a no. I mean, I frequently myself, I'll have a bank, do some deals with them, then the next one they don't like. Okay, I'll go find a different bank, and now they like that deal, and it just got to basically have different banks, different options to work with. Yeah. And again, some mortgage brokers can do that, but I just have found that in commercial specifically, it seems easier and less cost just to go to banker direct, is in my experience. Yep.
And lies a little bit in this. There's a conundrum always, and I often call it the commercial chicken and the egg. Really, is you sit there and you get a little bit of information and you want to go to your to a mortgage professional to get a financing opinion. But then the seller doesn't want to give you any information until they get an offer. So you're trying to sit there. It's the chicken and the eggs. Well, I need this information in order to go get some financing opinion in order to write you a good offer. And the seller's going, I'll give you this information when you write me an offer. So something's got to give in that scenario typically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's very true. And I mean, there is some sellers who they won't really want to provide anything until you have an offer in place. But again, how to make an offer? I don't know what your rents are. I don't know, don't know if the deal even makes sense. So, I mean, I would always just push back and try and lay that out. And again, you don't need to get all the information. You don't need to see every lease and see all the details. But okay, what's your base rent? Is there anything? The thing is there anything weird in the lease that's going to maybe mess me up? But again, to qualify that, a lot of times they say, oh no, it's just normal triple net lease. Get your offer in place. Sometimes you get back and you review the 30-page lease, and it's like find things in there that are deal killers. Like, for example, I had one deal under contract. The numbers look good at first glance, and so I wrote an offer, got accepted, and then I'm digging through the 30-page lease, and it's like, oh, you're paying property tax for your tenant. Well, you didn't tell me that. That's a $30,000 a year bill. Like that's a deal killer. Like now it's unsellable property. Like it's there's stuff like that you find, or you find you told me a 5-year lease, but I go into your lease and it says, yes, it's a 5-year lease, but the tenant has a 60-day out clause. So if they give you notice, they can terminate within 60 days. So you actually have a 60-day lease. So a bank is not going to be on board, and I don't want to be on board because I really only have a 60-day lease. So there's definitely, but that's all. Again, that's down the line, the due diligence, that's stuff you dig into. A lot of times you won't actually see the leases until later on, but that's okay as long as the numbers look good. You do that end, but get your initial numbers, make sure they look good, and then if they look good, you can kind of dig into the more stuff after that. But you also don't want to spend a whole bunch of time going through every detail before you know you have a deal. Because that's the biggest thing is the numbers have to work at the front end.
100%. And I often sit there and go, I don't have commercial properties, which I should probably start looking at this. Is if I was ever selling a commercial property, like I would want to have all my books, all my ducks in a row. Here's the lease, give the agent, like I'd want to give everything to the person in advance. So we're not wasting our time with a terrible offer and the whole back and forth, and just give them what they want and get the books in tip top shape, get the leases in good shape and just make it shine, right? Most people don't do that.
And I would agree 100% with you. That would be the way to do it. But I'd say in practice, that almost never happens. It's very rare you have somebody with that. It's more like, oh yeah, here's kind of a chicken scratch rent roll on it, and I don't have any financials because I run it through a different company, got mixed in with this other one, and it's about this. There's a lot of digging that goes on after the fact to verify their information. But I mean, if you work with someone who is in that space a lot, they can look at the numbers and know if something's off. Just at first glance, sometimes like, oh, wait a second, why is this this property tax number that seems out of whack? Something's wrong here. Like there's just different things you can pick up on if you're in it all the time looking at it.
Yeah, so that's if you're selling, get your ducks in a row to sell. If you're buying, you actually would sit there and go, the harder I have to dig and the deeper I have to dig and the harder to pull the information out might be the opportunity to get a better deal, right? The poor operators, the ones that aren't doing a good job, are probably the ones that you're going to get the better deals. Is that a fair assessment?
I would agree with that for sure. And there's also ones, maybe their rents are low, like their rents are $10 a square foot when the market is now 14, and that's a huge difference in valuation. So if you're buying at that $10 valuation versus you can get those rents up at the next lease renewal up to 14. I mean that's a large percentage of free equity you can get there. So
wow, awesome.
A lot of times the people who are less organized are more likely to maybe not be running their property the way they should be.
Yep. And you probably sit there and go, you probably start rubbing your hands. Oh, they don't have any of these documents. I know offhand, I know how much dollar per square foot that's going to get for rent. I know those kind of things. And man, this might be an opportunity. And you're probably a buyer first, a realtor second. And you've said that a couple of times.
100%. That's definitely my focus. Absolutely.
Well, do you pass any of those really good deals on to your buyers, or do you buy them all for yourself?
Yeah. And to be fair, I always tell any clients of mine, like I'm an investor first and I'm a realtor kind of second. So I am buying. If we're looking at the same thing, if you kind of after a consultation say, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z, and like, okay, well, that's exactly what I'm looking for as well. I'll just straight up say, yes, that's what I'm looking at as well. So I might not be the best fit for you, but you know what, there is deals that cross my desk that maybe I can't do or aren't a good fit for me that might be a good fit for you, and I would still send them your way, and maybe that would work for them. But I would say, if you really want to be in that, I'm probably not the guy because you're going to be competing with me on different offers. But same time, there is times when I don't have the capital or just a property for whatever reason, just it doesn't quite work for me, but it might work for them. There is times when I definitely just pass decent deals on to people, no question.
Wow, nice. How refreshing. Like just tell them the truth up front and see where it goes from there. Not have to, chase the deal and tell them whatever they want. Just be open and honest up front. So well done. Congratulations.
Yeah. That's always my policy, just be straight up with them. Like saying, I know some realtors who maybe do flips, and they have flip clients, but they're also buyers of them. And I mean, that definitely creates a dilemma. It's like, which do I send this to my client, or do I just do the deal myself? So I just straight up front, I'm an investor first, but I do come across deals that I don't always do. So I'll send something your way if it fits your criteria.
Yep. Nice. Okay, so let's get back to the process. So we've had our qualification conversation. I have the capital. I'm prepared. I've gone to a qualified bank or a commercial lender, then they've given me an opinion on maybe a pro forma that you've sent me of some listings that you have on the shelf at the moment. Everything kind of looks good. I've honed in on one of them. What's kind of the next step for the acquisition of that property from there? The diligence steps, the offer steps, what do we do from here?
Yeah, so I guess your offer will be kind of similar to your residential. You basically will write up a formal offer, and same thing. You put your conditions in the same way you would on residential, but you'll have everything's longer. Everything takes longer in the commercial world. So instead of having, say, a 2-week condition period you might have in residential, you're going to have minimum 6 weeks. Maybe you go 4 weeks if you really want to push it, but 6 weeks is a bit safer to go 6 weeks conditions, because the bank, for one, is going to take a long time to get you approved. Plus, a lot of times there's other reports you got to gather. Environmental is something that is going to be, every bank's going to require you to have an environmental report, and that can take 30 days to get. So the prepared sellers will have that pre-done and you can just use their report. But I'd say most sellers don't want to spend the money if they don't know they have a deal, so they won't spend the $3 or $4 grand on a report. And so you'll have to do that through your due diligence. So in your offer, you put, subject to a clean environmental to buyer satisfaction, 6 weeks for financing, and I just do like kind of a catch-all due diligence condition as well. Just kind of catches everything, and then you want to check out because you're going to look at the leases, and kind of what the way I do it is start looking at the big items first. If there's something big that's going to cause you to blow up the deal, let's look at that first and not waste too much time. So get it from the banker. First glance from the banker. Again, they're not going to be able to give you a solid yay right away, but at least they can look at numbers. Okay, no, this is within our range. This is reasonable. Get maybe the roof checked out, because roof is a major cost item. So get that, get a local roofing company to go there and give their opinion on it and let you know if there's anything of concern there. And some landlords will have maintenance records where you can look at, but I still always get an independent opinion of it and have it looked at. And then the lease review. So you go through there. They'll provide you a rent roll before you put the offer in most of the time if you push them a bit. But leases, typically won't get all the leases. So then you go through all the leases and just see if there's anything in the lease that's going to cause the deal to blow up. So, kind of get that out of the way early before you spend too much time, too much money on all your other reports.
Yep.
So yeah, you go through that stuff. And if everything's kind of clear sailing, still looking good from there, then I'd always wait till my bank gives me the go ahead, at least a conditional approval saying, okay, you're approved as long as the environmental is clean, the appraisal is good. And then typically a lot of banks will ask for a structural report as well. So basically like a home inspection on steroids, where they actually will want an engineer to go there and inspect the building and make sure there's no major, issues there that might cause concern. So, all those reports. So typically the environmental will be paid by the seller. If you put in the contract, that's kind of the norm, but not always. It's got to be negotiated in. And then the other reports you'd pay for. So appraisal, the building inspection, that'd be paid by you. And there are a lot more in commercial. So, your $3 to $4 grand for an appraisal is pretty typical. $3 to $4 grand for inspection is pretty typical. So just kind of bigger numbers. Yep. And you just kind of go about your due diligence that way.
Yeah. Now, I imagine this is exactly the same in the commercial world as it is in the commercial residential world. Apartment building is, I make the joke, is when it comes to diligence, everything takes 10 times longer and everybody has their hand out for a fee for every piece of work, and it's all payable up front and it's non-refundable.
Correct. So yeah, you got to spend probably, $10,000 to $15,000 on the deal, sometimes before you have any assurance that it's going to get done. And the bankers will always push you to, okay, get me an appraisal, get me the environmental, get me the inspection, and then I'll go through the deal. So in my world, I'm like, no, I want you to look at numbers first before I spend $15,000 on all these reports. Yep. And then give me at least your, approval based on those reports being clean, because it's kind of they don't want to do too much work on it before they know something, but I don't want to pay too much money. So it's kind of a balancing act. You kind of have to negotiate with your banker on that to when things get done. Yeah,
and typically most banks have an application fee too, in order to even to have the privilege of borrowing the money and put an application in. They have a fee as well.
Correct. Yeah, very very common to have an application fee, and again, depending on who you're with, brokers or banks direct. I think that's one of the reasons I like going bank direct, is there's the fees are lower if you're going bank direct than a broker, because less people have to get paid. So yeah, on a typical deal, I'm paying, $5,000 to $10,000 in bank fees as far as just for the privilege of borrowing the money,
Yeah.
all their paperwork to go with it. And then legal fees are substantially higher as well.
Okay. Got it. Understood. Okay. So, and then just always budget more time. And then, okay. So we've got an offer in. We now are going through the financing process. We're going through all the diligence. Do you kind of have a diligence checklist that you share with people as well, with things to check out? Do you have kind of in that package of pro formas and stuff, do you have kind of a little bit of a checklist that you use as well?
Maybe I should, but no, I don't have a specific checklist, but I just have a.
I would bet you do. It's probably
it's up there, but yeah, it's not. I've never put it on paper, but yeah, there definitely is a checklist there.
Yeah. Okay. So
no, I mean, again, the main things is just check out your major items first is always my thing. Check out the things that are going to blow up the deal first, and then kind of work with the other details later.
Yeah.
And check them out, and then also I didn't mention before, but interviewing the tenants as well. That's something I do as well. Probably quite a bit later in the process, because a lot of times the landlord doesn't really want you to. Sometimes not even want you to know their tenants know it's for sale. So they want to know, at least maybe at that point you have a bank approval in hand, subject to some conditions, and then maybe they get the permission to talk to tenants. I mean, there's some landlords will let you talk to them, right away. They don't care, but other ones will kind of a little protective of wanting that. So, you learn a lot from talking to tenants.
I would imagine the health of the tenant's business is probably one of the most paramount things in the commercial space. And I'm going to use a bad reference here. Don't hold this against me. But if there's a Blockbuster video rental in one of the commercial spaces or one of the retail spaces, you might want to have a second opinion or have a conversation with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope you catch that before the offer phase, but exactly. For sure.
Well, but however, with the commercial, you can literally go and you can do research on the businesses. Like you don't have to, you can see who's in there and what's the business. If I'm sitting there going, oh, geez, one of the corner tenants, one of the anchor tenants is the liquor distribution branch or something, right? Or, if it was cannabis or something, maybe I'd have a little bit of leery about that. But, there's certain maybe it's a coffee shop or whatever, right? You can do some research on the businesses that are the tenants in there right
absolutely.
now.
Yeah, because I mean, really, a lot of what you're buying the building, but you're also buying the tenants as well. Like the lease in place, they have value. If they're good long-term tenants, then they have higher value than like you said, a Blockbuster Video who's a little bit away from just being shut down. But you definitely tenants are important in your due diligence, just for your future safety, as well as the banks are looking at tenants as well. Again, I don't know if they're going to look into them as far as like pulling financials and stuff like that, but I mean, they're gonna be aware of, and they'll ask around too, like, off the record, other bankers, does this tenant pay their bills, that kind of stuff. So you can definitely, that's part of the process. And that's again, even the interview process, you can find out a lot about the building as well. Like the U.S. tenants, any issues with the building. Oh yeah, the roof leaks like all the time. Like, they'll just like residential, a lot of times they'll just tell you as it is. They're not going to try and hide it from you typically, because they want it dealt with and they want it to be known. So and just as far as their plans, like I mean, maybe they only have a year left on the lease, but like, oh, you guys happy here? You're going, oh yeah, we love this place. We don't want to go anywhere, and that versus actually once this lease up, we got another spot we're going to. We're out of here. There's this place is terrible because there's a homeless problem in the back end or whatever. So there's. You learn a lot of that stuff just interviewing your tenants as part of your due diligence. Yeah,
I would imagine that in the case of the commercial, the tenant is one of the most important assets in the whole equation of this. If you have an entrenched, I'm just going to use another example. If you have an entrenched Italian family restaurant that's been there for 29 years and their identity is about this location on the corner of this street and they have all this kind of stuff, you probably have a good assurance that they're probably want to stay there for quite a while, and they might even have succession planning and hand it down and all that kind of stuff too. So it's very important to have the asset, which is your tenant, the business in it, and do your diligence on them. Okay. So
even so much more, like I said, so much more so in commercial than residential, because I mean, that's they're a huge part of why you're making an investment decision, because you're comfortable with them and how long they're going to be there, and the bank, the same thing. if they're not comfortable with the tenant, they're going to say no. Even if the building for the price looks good, but we don't like this tenant. We hear it doesn't pay his bills. We're not going to do this.
Yeah. So even to put it this way, think about it this way, everybody, they're a partner in the business with you, more so than a residential person living in a home. Is they can go in a year's time, they have no attachment, but the business is truly your building, is that they're in partnership with you in many respects.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so let's say it all checks out. We get an offer. The closing process costs more money. It takes longer. We've closed. We've owned the property. So now let's just talk a little bit about management of a commercial property, and also the lease process, and this term called tenant improvements. So I know there's three kind of things there first. So let's talk about property management first. Is this something you hire out? Is this something you can do yourself? What are some best practices for managing a commercial property, Tim?
Yeah, so I do of commercial buildings. I do in-house property management. I have myself, and I actually have an office manager who looks after a lot of that stuff as well. And I mean, it's not like there's nothing to do, but there's less to do in a commercial than there is residential. Especially, I mean, if it's a single tenant building, then there's very little to do. Literally, it's collect the rent, make sure the insurance and property taxes are paid, and that's unless there's a major problem with the roof or something like that, there's not a lot to do. So a lot of times I've had some tenants who they've been in there for years and there's never been any communication in years on some, and they have one direct deposit and it just gets pulled out of the account, and it can be very smooth. But there's other times when if there's some issues with the building you need to deal with, or if there's some move outs and that, and there's different types of property that have more work required than others. So if it is a multi tenant building, multiple bays, usually there's snow removal and grass to look after. So that would just be, hire out a company for that and just look after making sure they're happy and paid for. And typically in that type of scenario, maybe you might have a little more turnover in your tenants than say your single tenant bay would be, because there is maybe it's a smaller, more affordable space. So people are moving in as a startup business, and maybe they're moving up and out. So there's a bit more turnover there. But it's, again, you're not getting the calls about, the toilet's leaking, or, this the switch here is not quite working. Like, you're not getting those kind of calls. I mean, and if you do occasionally get those calls, you say, no, actually just, you got to look after that. I'll give you a good plumber's name if you need, but that's on your end to look after.
Yeah. So by and large, it can be done. It's a little simpler. Just imagine with a good group of contacts and who to call and who to talk to, you can get a lot of that done. And so it can be, and here's the beautiful thing about commercial, I would imagine, is you can actually charge you can charge the tenant for the management cost. Is that true? That's typically in a lot of the leases?
That's very typical. So as opposed to, again, typical is about 5% of your base rent, you would charge, again, it's whatever your lease says, but it's typical that it gets charged in there. So you're basically charging them to manage them. So you can farm that out to somebody, and they would typically charge that same 5%, so that it's no cost to you. Or you do it internally to cover your internal costs, like in my case, I have an office manager who I have to pay for that. So you can do that, and that's very typical. I mean, the thing is with commercial, everything's all over the place. I mean, when you inherit buildings, I mean, the lease might say you can pay management fee, but they haven't charged a management fee in 10 years. And that's very common. Or there's ones that it's by the book, and they charge management fees, and they charge exterior maintenance fee, like, because eventually the roof is going to fail, so we want to have a charge in there for that. So how each person handles the building is very different. And again, when you buy a building with existing tenants, you're kind of inheriting what they have. And again, you could maybe, if management fee weren't being charged, maybe you could incorporate it, but at the same time, you don't always want to come in and all of a sudden, now your fees are $1,000 more a month, and not a great way to start off. So you kind of got to balance that and make sure it's doable for everybody. Like I said, your tenant is your partner, so you want them to be happy and be there long term. But at the same time, it's a business, so you got to make sure your bases are covered as well. It's kind of a balancing act there.
Now, guys, just imagine that in a residential world, that you can. One of the reasons why I believe most people self-manage in residential is there's two reasons. One is they're really control, and they can do it better than any other party, and they can just do it, which I 100% agree. You will take more care of it doing it yourself than any third party, no matter how good they are. Okay. But one of the main reasons why people do is because the margins are so thin that you can't afford to hire anybody to do it. So you just are forced to do it, and you actually hate it, and you just hate that side of the things. In the commercial realm, from what I'm hearing from Tim, is the margins are significantly better, that you can treat this like a business, that you can hire somebody to do it. As a matter of fact, you can put that cost onto the tenant and build it into your lease.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, and again, some people might do it to save the money, but there's other things there that again, I've seen so many things where, like, I'll take over a building and they weren't charging the tenant insurance payments. Like, it's in the lease, but they just, I didn't even think we charged that, because they don't really know, they're not involved. It's more of kind of a side thing. Maybe they had a business and then they moved out and now they got a tenant in place and they're just doing it that way. So just because you can always self-manage doesn't mean you should. Like, there's things that you're gonna miss, and so you definitely see it all the time where things are not looked after because they're just not engaged and maybe not even have the experience to know that that's the norm, and the tenant's not going to tell you any different. You're not charging me for insurance or something like that. So you definitely got to get yourself educated, like in anything. If you're going to manage it yourself, get yourself educated, or find a good property manager, and at least you're not paying that cost out of your pocket. It will come out of the tenant's pocket if you have a properly done up lease.
Yep.
And
treat it like a business, like more than ever. We talk about it on the residential side. Treat it like a business, but this is a business. That is what it is, right? And treat it like the business it is. Okay, so we can go many, many different directions. And what I want to do here is I want to talk a little bit about the lease. The lease in the within the commercial, there's no typical residential I have to keep getting my terminologies. There's no typical lease that is governed by a governing body, I would imagine. Is this 100% to be negotiated between tenant and landlord? Talk to me a little bit about the lease process.
Yeah, for sure. So you're right. There is no standard lease. There's no landlord tenant board who kind of referees any issues there. Basically, it's contract law. So it's whatever's agreed upon by both parties is the way it is. Like, a lot of times I'll have questions from either landlords saying, "Oh, my tenant said this and this, and I don't know what to do here." Well, almost always my response, "Well, what's the lease say? Check the lease. What's the lease say? Who does what? The lease will lay it out. If hopefully you have a properly done lease to lay it out." But again, there is no standard. Some people you almost use a residential lease, and that's what they work with. There's others who go to the extreme. They have a 40-page lawyer drawn up lease that nobody can understand except the two lawyers who drew it up. So I personally, I kind of have an in between. I mean, I have a lease that it's like a 6-7 page lease that covers all your bases, but it's not so. I want my tenants to understand it. I want them to read it and know what they're agreeing to, versus the 40-page lease. They're like, I don't know, I'll just sign it and not know what it is. But I mean, the norm is definitely the longer lease, done up by a lawyer, and every land will have their own lawyer, and the lawyers say, "Oh, you have to, always got to have you write every lease for you and cover this, cover that." I mean, can be good advice. It also can be costly to have a lawyer do it for you every time, and that. So I kind of have a standard, my own internal lease I use, which is, it has the protections in place, but it's not maybe
right
impossible to understand, and nobody really understands it. So.
In the commercial space, is there anything such as rent controls? I know that's a word that most Albertans don't understand, right? No rent controls. There's no. What about an eviction process? Is that clearly defined in the lease? Like, if somebody stops paying for whatever reason, or they start going against the terms in there, what kind of a process do you have to get somebody out?
Well, what's your lease say, Russell?
Good answer.
That is kind of the answer on that. Is whatever the lease says governs it. I mean, my leases will have a clause in there basically says if they stop paying rent, I can lock the doors and repossess their stuff. Again, you don't want to do that. That's the nuclear option, but it's in there. You have different stuff where you don't have to go through a whole court process to get them out like you would in a residential lease.
Yeah. So totally understand that. And that the cool thing is whatever you can negotiate and agree to with landlord and tenant is what the governing law is. And I imagine if all push came to shove, it would be that you're going to court to do this as opposed to any government legal body. If there's any disputes and stuff like that, there might be some higher legal bills as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Be through courts, and I mean, again, the idea of the lease and why the lease so detailed and writing up the lawyers is because they want to be able to avoid the court here. The lease
Right.
states that if you don't pay your rent, I can repossess your stuff and change the locks. And again, you don't ever want to do that, but you have it there in case. It's not like residential where you got to jump through all the hoops for months and wait for the boards to kind of give you permission to take your property back. You can do it once they're in default of the lease. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of attracted me to it. Just, I mean, it is easier to get a tenant out if you want to, but at the same time, you're a partner with your tenant, so you don't really a lot of times want them to leave because it's not like I can just put an ad up and have somebody in there the next month like you have for residential. There's a process and a cost to getting it refilled. So ideally, you want to succeed, but if they're not paying your rent, then you have to, they're basically stealing from you, so you have to act accordingly.
Wow. So really, it's got favorable landlord and tenant laws. You get better cash flows. You get, potentially a better asset that you can work with. Man, you're painting this very rosy there, Tim. It's
there
like,
is some downsides too.
Yeah,
it's not
I imagine that
all
tenancy
rainbows.
risk of having something empty for a long period of time would be a very frightening thing to have somebody have to keep writing a check each month with no rent coming in.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest downside is that it can sit empty. I mean, you see buildings sit empty for a year or two. Even the market's okay. It's just if that building doesn't fit for the specific tenant who's looking, and it can sit. So that's the biggest downside. That's why I always recommend don't have just one building. Have them spread over multiple units. Even if it is different buildings within the same company, you can still spread that risk out versus.
Smart. Having
one and cash reserves. I mean, definitely keep a larger cash reserve than you would in residential. Like that's kind of your two defense mechanisms. Your a little bit of diversity between your units and cash reserves. And then, I mean, I like cash flow as well as a defense mechanism. If you have a lot of cash flow and good cash flow properties and you have an empty one, those ones will make up for it. So.
Yep. Oh, awesome. I mentioned the term tenant improvements, TI, and can you talk about that a little bit before we pivot in the conversation?
Yeah. So tenant improvements, basically it's getting the space ready for the tenant. So a lot of them might be specialty uses. If you have say an empty retail spot, but your next tenant might be an office tenant, then all the walls, putting that up, and that's again all to be negotiated with who's paying for that. Sometimes it's the landlord, they'll pay for it to get a tenant in there. Sometimes the tenant will, 100% take that on and put that cost in, which if you can get a tenant doing that, I mean, you're going to have a long-term committed tenant because they're spending that money to improve the space. And so again, you see it both ways. And sometimes it's all kind of how motivated you are to do either, whether you're the tenant or landlord who ends up paying that cost. There's no real set norm. It's always the tenant for this, but always landlord for that. It's kind of all over the place. And your leases, like I said, all different things in your leases as far as who does what and that.
So, and is it kind of a 50-50 type of thing, or is it just kind of, it all depends, it's like an accounting question. It depends.
It depends, but it's so true though. I always hate hearing that answer. It depends, but it really is. It's case specific and property specific. I mean, like I said, my bread and butter properties. There's not a whole bunch of tenant improvements typically. Like there's I said, a little office up front and a big shop in the back, big warehouse in the back. There's not a lot of stuff.
Maybe remember mullets.
And mullet guys, yeah, exactly. So now the mullet, you might need a little bit of some welding plugs in the back that aren't there. So again, who's paying for that? That's just part of the process. If my bay's been vacant a while and I've had no interest, I'll probably offer to pay that. Where if I have multiple people interested in the spot, I'll probably say, well, if you want welding plugs there, you hire an electrician and make sure that you got a permit and get them put in. So It really is all over the place.
So let's talk about if it was, let's just run a scenario here. And there's always the what ifs, right? What ifs and depends. Okay. So let's say if I'm going to be, as the owner, as the landlord, I'm going to be putting in some of these improvements, does that mean that I potentially can charge a higher rent to help capitalize that? Or is it typically the rent is the rent, or vice versa? If they're doing the work, is the rent usually a little less? Like, what does that, how would that work if it goes either way?
Yeah. So say on a typical, we'd advertise the space, say I've got a space there, and I'd advertise, call it $12 a square foot. And that would be typically as is, as you see, it's $12 a square foot. And if you're going to want me to put a whole bunch, say $100,000 worth of improvements in it, then yes, I'd probably ask for a higher rent amount to compensate for that cost. Or the tenant will say, okay, no, I don't want to pay higher rent, but I'll put the money up for the improvements and do it that way. So it's all kind of case by case negotiation. And again, it all kind of comes down to how negotiable the landlord is and how negotiable the tenant is. Like I said, if I've been sitting a long time and I have no other prospects, I'm going to probably bend over backwards for a tenant. Actually, I had a building that just went vacant, and the outgoing tenant was going to leave all the office furniture, but they ended up taking it. They didn't say for sure, but they always going to stay. And then I had an incoming tenant who was, I want that furniture. So end up they take the furniture, and I'm eating some furniture costs because I thought I'd do it for him, and it was a property was maybe a little tougher to move. So I'll eat the cost to get a new tenant in there. So it's all kind of case by case.
Yep.
Where I have a different building where they want to put a shower room in because they're going to build a gym in that space. Which, I mean, I'm not going to have a lot of value for that after they move out because it's kind of specific. So it's like I don't want to pay the cost for that. And it's a more desirable spot. So I'm like, if you want it, you can do it, but it's at your cost.
So I would imagine also could be a, potentially a little marketing ploy as well as, maybe you're advertising and sit there and go, owner will contribute a blah, 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 tenant improvement for improvements in the property to try to land a tenant. I imagine that there's lots of fun things you can do with that.
Oh, absolutely. And then especially on new builds too, that's very common. They may say, okay, we'll give you a $25 per square foot allowance to build out your office. So if maybe it'll just be a shell, and we'll say, okay, $25 square foot, which doesn't really go that far, but maybe that's what they're marketing or whatever, and they negotiate from there. But, the real specific uses, I mean, typically the landlord's not going to want to pay those out unless they can maybe recover it within the lease. So if say it's a dental where they're real specifics they're putting in there, usually the landlord isn't going to want to do that because if they end up moving out that specific, it's not going to be a value. So, but if maybe you advertise that over say you get a 10-year lease, okay, the cost to advertise over 10 years with some margin for doing it, and might be a win-win there as well. So it's really, again, there's a lot that goes into the negotiation process, and it all kind of comes down to what works for either party and how motivated the other party is.
Yep. Oh, cool. So it truly is a negotiation. It truly is a business transaction. And I would imagine it would come down to a little bit about the nature of the business, if they need to, what they need to put into the property, if it's going to be their equipment, or it's going to be all their own stuff, and they need to take it with them, right? It probably will be a different, as opposed to a fixture of the building, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Holy moly, Tim. So we could go on for probably another hour and a bit here with this. You're just an extremely well-knowledged person. You're obviously, did I hear correctly? Did I make the right note that you bought your first place when you were 18?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And so you're only like 24 now, right? Is that correct?
24. Yeah. No.
So you've been in this game for a while,
40,
haven't you?
Almost 40 here now. So I've been at it a little while for sure.
Wow.
But
congratulations.
The first one, my parents, we did a rent calculation, what rent was versus what a mortgage payment would be. And I was like, what, you mean it's cheaper to buy the house than to rent it? Well, I'll just do that, and I'll do that over and over again. And that was kind of the first thought of doing that. And that's kind of what I started to do. And just kind of like that and didn't look back.
Awesome. So if somebody was sitting here and they're listening to this and they go, holy moly, this sounds really rosy, and I'd like to make this pivot into, or even just jump right into it. What advice would you give to somebody for that they're looking to just get into this game of commercial? Now, we're going to talk about somebody who's just starting. They probably have already, and let's make the assumption that they have some acumen, and maybe they have a single family property or two or three. They know about real estate, but now they want to maybe make that pivot. What would be some practical first steps for somebody to make that pivot into the wonderful world of commercial?
Yeah. I think because every market is a sub-market, I mean, get to know your local market and just like really get to dial in on, okay, what are rents in this market? I mean, a lot of you can do just online, like research, okay, this building's going for this, and then just start running calculators on them and find, okay, this building, okay. And sometimes commercial, there's a building is listed for lease and for sale. Okay. this one's listed for $12 a square foot and it's $1 million. Do the math on it. Does this building make sense? And just kind of get kind of in there. And I mean, if you can have a, I guess, understanding a realtor who can really walk through the process, just start looking at properties and get a feel for what things go for. And then you can know when a deal actually comes up, if it's a deal that works for you. Like start running a lot of analyzing properties as if you're going to buy them and do a lot of that stuff. So when a deal does cross your desk, you're ready to go and get yourself ready to be able to shoot the puck if that deal does cross your desk. Like talk to your mortgage broker beforehand, whoever you can work with, and make sure, okay, I know I can get approved for between $1 and $2 million as long as the numbers work on it and that kind of stuff. So because again, a lot of time is again, even if I have a client who maybe I'm going to pass a deal to, if they're not ready to do it, if I know they're not kind of ready to pull the pin, I'll send it to somebody else who I think is ready to shoot. So you kind of got to make sure that you're ready to act if an opportunity comes. And the best way to do that is educate yourself and get really versed in whatever it is you're focusing on.
No, awesome. Like most things in life is to, first of all, make a commitment that that's something you want to dive into. Start educating yourself, start becoming an expert in that, then start having the conversations with the team members in there, and just follow the steps and be able to. I have a client in Saskatoon, and it doesn't take. It's not as onerous and is not as daunting as you think, and it can happen quicker than you think too. A client in Saskatoon that from first time we had a conversation, and then he decided he was going to make that pivot into commercial. He was into getting into properties within 9 months with things. And here's the cool thing too, is there's an awful lot of things you can negotiate in commercial space too. You can negotiate rent to owns on the purchase a lot more too. You can negotiate agreements for sales on things and stuff like that. Like there's a lot more creativity in the commercial realm than there is in the residential realm. Would you agree to that point as well?
Oh, I agree 100%. There's definitely a lot more of that. And that's one of the things I like about it, because I enjoy that type of I sometimes it's not always a deal, but you can make it a deal, right? Like, so like owner financing, or like I said, rent to owns. I mean, a lot of times say you have a business and you want to move into a space, get a lease and get an option to purchase as well. Like get that kind of built in. And the best time to negotiate that is before you're in the building. Building's vacant. Even if you're maybe not quite ready, say, okay, I do want to maybe eventually own my own building. I'm not quite ready, but I want an option at a set price. Within say 2 years, I can buy this building for X, and then you have yourself some runway there. So that's a big thing. I've done that for a few clients who were moving into the space, but they weren't ready. It's okay, let's get an offer in place, because I mean, a lot of people say, oh yeah, maybe I'll sell you the building down the road, but I mean, now where's your negotiating power? Yep. It's in their hand, because you're in the building. It's your location and you're known for it. But now you're going to pay a much higher premium than if it's vacant right now. I'll lease your building if you agree to give me a purchase option as well. And it very often happens that way. And people who own these buildings, I mean, they're business people, they're invested well, so they're more open to creative solutions because they've always maybe done some in their past as well. And owner financing is also a very common thing that comes into play. And I use it a lot as far as buying buildings, and sometimes to get better terms, sometimes just because maybe something's unbankable. A lot of times the building is not bankable right now, but maybe I can do a couple things and now it's bankable, and then I can buy it out that way as well.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't 100% is if you potentially can lock your price in today, and if we're still in an inflationary time frame, you potentially in a couple of years from now could have a significant equity position on that property when it comes time for you to buy it. Or if you don't, then you don't have to exercise. You can renegotiate again at that time, right?
Exactly.
So lots of really...
I have. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I've put people into properties, and they have a $10 option. I mean, it's a regular contract. Instead of a 6-week condition period, it's a 2-year condition period, due diligence condition, and then if any time during those 2 years they can buy it. I mean, maybe there's a clause in there that the seller might want saying, if I get another offer, you got to act on it or match it or whatever you negotiate. But I mean, the time to negotiate that is before you're in the building for sure.
Well, and that's what, talking specifically about this one client again, is he now, and I can't remember, it's either 2 or 3 years. I think let's go with 2. I said, you now have 2-year runway to potentially go out and attract investors over the next 2 years to potentially have some investors buy into it when it comes time to cash this out, right? And you could potentially show to those an investor pool of what you can get for it and what the value is going to be worth in the future and stuff like that. So you now have time to go out there, and you now can go attract an investment pool to come into it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a lot of what I do is I'll typically buy the building first and then get investors later, because I want to be able to act quickly on stuff. So I don't want to have to wait on, buying a building only if I get my investor. And I'll go buy the building, confident I know it's a good deal, and then maybe backfill it with an investor later once I got under contract, or even after I close sometimes, and do it that way to be able to, act quickly when an opportunity arises. Because it's especially me. I like to get a deal, so I won't buy just anything. So I want to make sure if it's a deal, I want to grab it.
Well, is Blake, is there a little Scottish in there or something there, Tim, or something?
Actually, a little bit, half Scottish, yeah.
Well, what are they? Isn't there a joke about? Sorry, this might be really. We have to be careful when we start telling jokes.
I don't want to do this stuff anymore, Russell.
we can't tell jokes anymore. Comedy and humor is now gone, right? It's now been canceled. Comedy and humor has been canceled.
Ashamed for that.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So Tim, you're 100% bringing the fire here today, my brother. So you're 100% a natural at this, and when the fire comes, bombs get dropped, and you're just one bomb after another. So that's awesome. I just wanted to thank you for your time here. And would you like to come on the show again, and maybe in a few months, if there's more people that are interested in having a deeper dive? Would you be interested in coming back again?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a real estate geek, so I love talking real estate. So I'm definitely happy to talk real estate anytime.
So if somebody was interested and get a hold of you, where would they find you on the social airwaves, or email address, or what would be the best place for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, if you just Google search my name, Tim Blake, Realtor, it'll come up with a bunch. But timblakerealestate.ca is my website, and all my contacts are there, and not too tough to find. Nice.
Well, by all means, if you're interested in the Grand Prairie market, which Alberta is open for business again, and against contrary beliefs by a lot of people, I honestly think that the next 10 years of economic growth and activity in this country of Canada is going to be coming from Alberta again. So that's what my prediction is, and I'm sticking to it, if you will.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of upside. I think we got a lot of upside coming. We haven't got the appreciation and inflation up here yet, but I think it's coming. So I think there's some definitely some positive times for Alberta in general, but for real estate end of it too.
Well, but we'll be open and completely honest, which we are, is the last, to be brutally honest, since probably 2008, it's been extremely tough. There was a run up, and then there was probably another dip after 2014, give or take, but it's been a rough ride. And I honestly think
we've had our challenges for sure.
I honestly think the saddle is back on the horse again, and it's time to ride again.
Yeah.
Ride or die, my brother. Ride or die. Right. So,
you gotta learn how to do the dips.
That's right.
They're coming. They always come. So you got to plan for them and act accordingly.
It's often not how you handle the wins; it's how you can manage the losses that are more important than any of that, and the lessons you can take from those hard, challenging times that will set you up for a bigger win as you go forward. Okay. Here's a question I like to leave off with a lot of people, and here's what the way it kind of is framed: the following is, say somebody is sitting here and they're listening to this podcast, or they're watching it on YouTube, and they're maybe feeling a little bit stuck, right? They're just not sure what to do. What are some parting, inspiring, encouraging words that Tim Blake can offer to that person that's just feeling a little stuck to help them move forward?
Yeah. I think part of it is just you're not going to know everything. You can't be an expert at the start. You got to just learn enough so you're at least confident, and then you got to shoot the puck. Like, a lot of people will keep on looking at things and analyzing things, and again, I know a lot of people who I've known for years who always say, "Oh yeah, I want to buy some real estate," but they just they'll learn and look at it and underwrite it, but you never shoot the puck. You got to shoot the puck. You're gonna make some mistakes, but you got to progress, and you'll get better and better as you go. Are you just buttering my bread by taking one of my signature sayings there, my brother? Oh, is that one of your sayings? I don't know. I have listened to a lot of your stuff. I've stole a lot of stuff from you over the years, so Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
Well, it's one of my core sayings from a way long time ago. Maybe I'll share that in another episode. Is I 100% agree that you just need to shoot the puck. Sorry for the hockey reference, but we're Canadians, and right, and I imagine everybody in Canada understands the shoot the puck reference, right? So.
I'm sure I probably heard that from you years and years ago at a presentation. I use it a lot. So
nice. Well, I guess my work here is done today then. Now, Tim, I just wanted to acknowledge you. I wanted to acknowledge you for starting at a wonderful early age, starting with the realization of the entrepreneurial journey, and also starting from a standpoint of niching yourself into an expertise in one market and being an expert and being one of the best in that area of your specific niche, and also understanding that you are a real estate investor first, and then you help clients around the process as well for there. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for that. You're doing a hell of a job, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the show and all the stuff I've learned from you over the years too. So I'm happy to give back anything, even if I got to repeat what you've already said.
Well, you know what? By all means, I can't even remember all the things I've said, but please continue sharing. Okay. Well, why don't we leave it there? And guys, we're about that hour and a half mark. This has been a wonderful conversation with Tim Blake. If you're interested in commercial investing, hit him up. Tim Blake, it's timblakerealestate.ca. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And take it from there. And if you are interested in getting some more content on commercial, leave me a review, send me some information, and I'll tap Tim on the shoulder, and we'll maybe brainstorm some other ideas of taking this conversation a couple more steps forward. Okay. Tim, thank you very much. You have yourself a wonderful day, guys. Bye for now. I sure hope you enjoyed this in-depth training video, and I applaud you for sticking around right to the very end. I believe in people that show up, put in the work, put in the time, and effort should be rewarded. If you're interested in taking the next step, if you're interested in going deeper and mastering what you just learned about in this training video, I encourage you to check out the Raising Capital Academy. So if you have found that you've received some value from the YouTube channel, or maybe you've listened to a podcast, you're only scratching the surface. That truly is just 1/10 of 1% of all the content and materials that have been created that are waiting for you on the other side. So I encourage you to check out the Raising Capital Academy. There's more than 100+ hours of video content, audio content, exclusive training material for those that are interested in taking the next step, those that are interested in going towards mastery, those that are interested in moving forward with velocity. So I would encourage you, wherever you're watching this video, around this video will be a link where you can check out all the details of the Raising Capital Academy. After you've checked out all the details on that page and you're interested in moving forward with velocity, click on the link that will take you towards the application. This is by application only. This is a community program and is for serious action takers only. So if you want to step up your game, if you have goals and dreams and aspirations for more, if you'd like to make a difference in the financial futures of the most important people in your life, I highly encourage you to check out the Raising Capital Academy. Click on that link and you'll be taken to the next step in the process to see if you qualify to take the next step forward for you. Hope to see you on the other side. Bye for now. Hey, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. If you are interested in moving forward with velocity, if you're interested in being a successful real estate investor, only 2 simple next steps from here. Number 1, below where you're watching this, there will be an opportunity for you to subscribe. And over here will be a hand-selected video for you to keep moving forward. Continue your journey forward. Just click on over here for that hand-selected video for you, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you very much.